The Tuatha De Danann, the children of Danu, the children born at the beginning of time, who make their towers in the Cronna Shiog, the fairy trees of Ireland, and many of them can be found here in the mighty plains of the Burren, and many of their stories can be found here, and this is one of them. For behind me on Mullock Moor, there lived a man whose name was Atty Jack. Now, Atty Jack was, shall we say, a farmer. Not a particularly nice one. A miserable sort of a character. He had a face on him that could turn a sunny Friday afternoon into a miserable wet Monday morning. He was so mean he wouldn't spend Christmas, and he didn't like visitors very much at all. Well, one day he was sitting in his little cottage. His cottage that had a tin roof, for it once had a thatched roof, but the wild winds and the fierce weather of the Burren soon rotted and blew that roof away. He had to replace with a tin one, which he was delighted with because it was cheap and it kept the damp out. Well, there was a knock on the door, and Atty got up and he shouted. He says, "Who is it?" And the voice says, "'Tis your brother. What do you want? I've come to see you." So Atty opened the door. He looked at the brother straight in the eye and he says, "I've seen you. Now get lost." Not a very nice sort of a fella. The brother says, "Atty, don't be like that now. Come on, I brought you some cake that the wife made." And of course, Atty loved the cake. Oh, a bit of Kearney cake. With a cup of tea and some butter on the cake. You couldn't beat it. Oh, the teeth were swimming in his mouth, I tell you. So anyway, the brother comes inside and the pair of them are sitting down beside the fire. Oh, it was great altogether. Eating the cake and drinking the tea and talking whatever the hell they were talking about. When all of a sudden, there was the sound of clattering and little dancing feet and singing and music on top of the roof of Atty's house. Dee-light-day, dee-light-day, dee-light-day-day-do, dee-light-day, dee-light-day, dee-light-day-day-day, dee-light-day-day-do, dee-light-day-day-day, dee-light-day... Ah, Jenny, what is this? What is it? What is it? I can't hear myself think. I'm trying to eat me cake, and I'm trying to drink me tea, and there's somebody having a concert on me roof. The brother says, "Atty, will you sit down, hold your whisht and calm yourself? Isn't that only the wee fairy folk having a dance on your roof? They're entitled to have a dance and a song just like anybody else, and they like your tin roof because they get a good old clatter out of it." Atty says, "Fairies," he says. "Only a donkey believes in that sort of thing." Well, the brother managed to calm down Atty. Atty sat down again, and they were eating away at the cake and drinking away at the tea, when all of a sudden, out of the blue, doesn't the music and the clattering start again? Dee-light-day, dee-light-day, dee-light-day-day-do, dee-light-day, dee-light-day, dee-light-day-day-day. I can't take it anymore! Well, this is madness altogether! My goodness, man, I can't even hear myself think. Well, the brother looks at Atty and says, "Atty, whatever you're going to do, please don't do it." Atty says, "No, I'm going to take care of this." He got up from his chair. He went outside. He lifted a great rock from the ground and he threw it at the tin roof. And the sound of the little fairy feet could be heard scuttling away. Atty came back inside and sat down and made himself comfortable, looking proud as Punch. And he says to the brother, "That's that problem sorted out now, so." The brother says, "Atty, you shouldn't have done that. My goodness, anyone will tell you if you were cruel to the fairy folk, they will pay a terrible trick on you." Atty says, "Fairy folk, only a donkey believes in that sort of thing." Well, the brother decided it was time for him to go, which he did, and Atty went to bed shortly after that. Well, the next morning, Atty Jack woke up and he went downstairs to wash his face. He looked in the bit of the mirror that he had, or the looking glass for another word, and he got the fright of his life, for out of his head was growing 2 donkey's ears. And when he looked, sure, wasn't there a donkey's tail growing out the back of him? Well, Atty ran like the clappers, straight to the brother's house, and he banged on the door and he says, "Brother, brother, there was something in that cake you gave me last night. It didn't agree with me at all. Would you look at the state of me?" he says. The brother answered the door, and when he saw the 2 donkey's ears growing out of Atty's head, he says, "Atty, there was nothing wrong with that cake I gave you, but it looks to me like the fairy folk made a right donkey out of you." Well, poor Atty went back home to his little cottage on Mullaghmore. He sat down beside the smouldering embers of the fire, feeling terrible sorry for himself. Oh, to brown Urim. When all of a sudden there was a knock on the door. He got up and he answered the door. And there was a little fairy maiden standing there. Beautiful. And she says, Atty, don't be sitting here by yourself. Why don't you come upon the roof with us and have yourself a wee dance? Well, that's what Atty thought. Sure, if you can't beat them, join them. He went out and he danced all night with the fairy folk upon his tin roof. And some say that he and the fairy maiden wed. And to this day, Atty Jack lives out his eternal life in the fairy mounds, the happiest man that ever lived. Dee-light-day, 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 do, dee-light-day, dee, dee-light-day, 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 dee, dee-light-day, do, dee-light-day, dee, dee-light-day, 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 dee, dee-light-day.